Hey everyone, this is Luke Seymour, Treasurer of International Business Association, and for today's virtual meeting, here I have Ryan Black. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, IBA, this is Ryan Bleck here. I went to Illinois State and I graduated back in 2017. I formerly served as the vice president to International Business Club. So there was a name change. It used to be called International Business Club, and it's since been changed to IBA. So
Sounds more
it's good to see.
professional.
Yeah. I was all on board when the name change came up. Um, but yeah, I'm glad to see that the club is still together and
Mhm.
doing well and recruiting some good members to to experience the global world that we live in here. So
Definitely.
um, yeah, like we were talking a little bit before we started recording here. I'm teaching English in Seoul, South Korea. So I went from studying international business and accounting at Illinois State. I did 2.5 years in sales after I graduated for C.H. Robinson, which is a logistics company. They're always at the career fairs, and I made the transition to teaching now. So it was a big change, but I've definitely been able to use a lot of the skills and life lessons that I've learned from my time at ISU and my time abroad through study abroad and international business club. So it's exciting, and yes, I'm not in the business world necessarily anymore right now, but everything that I've learned is still definitely applicable to
Mm,
my day-to-day life, and
mm,
we'll kind of get into that as we go on here. So
mm.
quick shout out to Dr. Ribbons. She was by far the most influential professor that I had during my time at ISU. So Dr. Ribbons, thank you for everything that you did. It's
Mm.
always nice to hear from you as well. So to everyone that's watching this interview, you guys have a great resource in Dr. Ribbons, and she's going to be a great help, as I'm sure you've experienced already,
Mm.
Luke.
Definitely. And I've never even had her as a professor for a course, but she's definitely been like helped me just choose the right path as I've gone through
For sure.
IBA and discovered the different aspects of international business. So
Right.
definitely big shout out to Dr. Ribbons. And
Big shout
so
out.
jumping back into your college experience, um, and I kind of mentioned this before the interview, like what transferable skills have you been able to use these from college to you said a logistics company and now to your teaching English over in Korea? What has kind of followed you throughout this whole journey?
Yeah, I would say communication has to be at the forefront of it all. Uh, Working in sales, previously, communication is huge. Being clear and concise is very important. And then when you bring the international component into the picture, it's even more important to be clear and concise to avoid those miscommunications, or whether it's cultural or just language barriers. There's a huge emphasis on communication, and that's something that I experience every single day.
Mm,
And right now I'm the head foreign teacher, so I do oversee 14 other native English speakers from the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, and Australia. So there's right there. I
mm,
haven't even talked about Korea yet, but right there, that's five different cultures and five different communication styles that we have there. So just I think being aware of how cultures and communication styles differ is a huge transferable skill that you learn as an IB major.
mm,
And a lot of the teachers that maybe don't have a business background, they're still good at communicating, but I think having that broad mindset and being aware of how cultures differ
mm,
is is very valuable, and from a leadership standpoint, I think has helped me a lot in the success of our school so far. So
mm.
yeah, and then bringing the Korean side of things into it, that's a completely different communication style, and
Mm,
I'm sure as you progress in your studies and learning about Hofstede and the different styles of communication, it's such a fascinating study if you
mm,
kind of take a step back and really think about it, and and now living in a different culture for,
Hmm.
longer than a study abroad term, it's clear that Hofstede knew exactly what he was talking about.
Yep, yep. And then while we're on Korea, what brought you to Korea? Because I know that at ISU they don't offer Korean as a language, and so I'm learning Mandarin currently, and my goal was to study abroad in China, but unfortunately China's closed right now. So
Right.
I will be going to Korea. So kind of what brought you to that country?
Yeah. So when I was looking to get out of sales, I really wanted to go live abroad.
Mm,
And climbing the corporate ladder in sales to be able to travel abroad was going to take a little bit too long. I
mm,
wanted to live abroad after college, and I just didn't want to keep waiting, and that kind of was what influenced me to make a career change. And funny enough, I went on Google and I searched jobs that require international travel, and teaching English abroad was one of
mm,
the most common results. And growing up, I worked in recreation, so working with kids was always fun. And I knew I didn't want to teach in the U.S., so I kind of crossed that off my list right away.
mm,
And then, yeah, I found that on Google, and it turns out just because of how rapid Seoul, especially, is growing with globalization, technology, it's
mm,
one of the fastest growing cities in the world.
mm,
So obviously, English being a business language, there is a very high demand for English teachers here.
mm,
So I guess you can say that's where the money's at right now. So
mm,
China and Korea were two of the higher paying countries for English teachers.
mm,
And I personally wasn't too keen on going to China. I don't know. I wouldn't say I was intimidated, but um, you never know what could happen there.
mm,
And personally, Korea just felt a little safer, and maybe um, especially since that was right before COVID happened. So that was another interesting. And we could talk about COVID and
we'll
for
definitely get into
hours.
that.
We could talk about COVID for hours, and I'm sure everyone's sick of that conversation by now. But going back to what I was saying, yeah, it was one of the higher paying countries.
Mm,
My grandpa did serve in the war, so he was here as well. So that did have some influence
mm,
on why I chose to come to Korea ultimately.
mm.
Plus, yeah,
And
being a big city, I wanted to be in a big city, so
mm,
Seoul was was
very
a good
large
choice.
city.
Yeah.
What was obviously America and Korea, differing cultures. You even mentioned Hofstede's, like the six different cultural aspects. What was the biggest shift for you? And did you go in knowing any Korean, or did you have to learn it all on the spot when you got to the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of hierarchy, I didn't that Asian cultures traditionally are pretty hierarchical,
Mm,
but again, like I kind of already said, you don't really realize it until you're living in that culture. And and I think a great example, something that I've experienced being in a leadership role here, is just how defined that hierarchy is,
mm,
where our principal on a number of occasions has communicated to me that she wants communication to start from the teachers to
mm,
come up to me, and then I
mm,
communicate things to the other Korean supervisors and herself.
mm,
So I don't want to say she gets angry when other teachers go directly to her, but
mm,
that's definitely something that I notice as being familiar with the culture.
mm,
A lot of the other teachers might not realize that, so that's kind of my job to explain to them that, hey, they have their culture, their norms, their customs, and we're living in their country. It
mm,
can be difficult to kind of adjust and adapt, but we have to do our best to follow them.
mm.
And I think that's one of the coolest challenges that I get to deal with. So I don't know if that necessarily
No,
answers the
and
question. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
no, that's perfectly fine. And you mentioned hierarchy in the work, like the workplace. Do you think that
mhm.
affects everyday Korean life, or is that visible everywhere you go, or just specifically like making sure you're
Yeah,
utilizing every chain of command?
definitely. What if I'll talk about? outside of the chain of command, but Koreans, I would say the Korean staff, we have Korean teachers as well that are in the classrooms with us and helping out with administrative things. I've noticed they're definitely less likely to kind of push back on management
Hmm.
and express their concerns or frustrations. It's more of they are told what to do, and they don't necessarily have much of a a strong opinion to share with their superiors.
Hmm.
And I, it's interesting to see because coming from a Western culture, we are very open with our communication. We're very
Hmm.
direct, and with them, it's considered rude or disrespectful if they're going to kind
Hmm.
of go out of their place and kind of push back and cause a scene. So it's very unique, and I think a lot of the Korean teachers that we have, they might look at some of the teachers that we have and be kind of what are these people doing? They're out of place. Why are they doing
Hmm.
this? But like I said, that's the beauty of studying international business. I'm in a school. It's also a business at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, lots of transferable skills, and even out in public, the hierarchy is noticeable on the subway. When you get here, you'll notice there's designated seats for the elderly, and being very open with your age is quite common.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that people are going to go up to you and ask how old you are on the train, but people do have a good sense of your age, and if there's a group of elderly people sitting in the seats and someone that's even older comes onto the train, you'll notice they will stand up and give that seat. So yeah, hierarchies everywhere, and after a while you just kind of start getting used to it. But
Hmm.
definitely looking back, I did notice that right away, and
Hmm.
I guess you can say it was a bit of a surprise. I don't
Hmm.
like to. I personally don't like to say culture shock because I try not to set too many expectations going into a culture,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
because they're all different, and that's kind of when culture shock happens is when you set expectations, I think.
Definitely, definitely. And then how much Korean did you know for going overseas? Did you know any?
No, no. I can still say after being here for uh, how long have I been here now? What year is it? I've been here
2022.
for I've been here for about a little over 2.5 years, and my Korean is still very poor.
Hmm.
Um, it's a tough language, and at school it's all English. It's an English only policy that we have with the students
Hmm.
too. So at school there's really no opportunities to pick up on much, just because the Korean teachers even have to use English with the kids.
Hmm.
And then I'll be honest, at the end of the day, working with kindergartners and first, second, third graders, it's exhausting.
Hmm.
And the last thing I want to do at the end of the day is to try to study and and
Hmm.
learn a new language. That's
Hmm.
not to say I haven't picked up on any. I know the very basics, saying hello, goodbye. I
Hmm.
can read a little bit, order food at the restaurant if I need to, and um, usually things you can, especially being in Seoul, there's
Hmm.
enough people that speak English that you can get by, which is a blessing and a curse because
Hmm.
being surrounded by people that speak English doesn't really give you the best opportunity to learn the language.
Hmm.
But
And
we're
would
we're
you,
getting by.
yeah, would you say there's a large international, like foreign presence in Seoul then? Like very
Yeah,
noticeable?
there definitely is. Before we started jumping on the interview, I was
Mm.
talking about just how big this city is, and growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, 3 million some people in
Mm.
the Chicago area. Here, there's 10 million people in the city alone.
Mm.
I think 25, 26
Mm.
million people just in the metropolitan area. So there's huge pockets of international communities. I'd say around the universities, there's going to be a larger foreign community. There's some areas like Itaewon, Gangnam. Those areas are typically where the foreigners tend to flock to on the weekends.
Mm.
Um, and you don't really need to speak the language in order to have a good weekend or
Mm.
to interact with the locals because they all speak pretty good English there.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm slowly but surely picking up a little bit here and there, doing my best. But
Maybe you'll have to
it's
teach
it's
me
a tough
some.
language. Yeah, it's a tough language. I'm not going to lie to you.
Mm.
but yeah, it's like I kind of started hinting at, trying to learn a language. The best way to learn it, just immerse yourself in the language or in
Mm,
the culture.
definitely.
So yeah, you'll pick up on some.
Hopefully, hopefully. Because after 3 semesters of Mandarin, kind of ready for a change. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe
that's
I'll learn the alphabet
also
before I leave.
not an easy language, but the alphabet in Korean is relatively easy
Mm,
to learn, but
mm,
then you have to have the vocab.
mm,
So what you'll see is there's a lot of things that are Konglish, which are
mm.
English words that are written in Korean,
Okay.
and those I can read. But as soon as there's different vocab involved, when it doesn't translate perfectly into the characters,
Mm,
I'm a lost puppy. I have no idea what's
mm,
going on.
mm. And then you said you've been in Korea for over 2 years. Is this like a lifelong career you want to pursue in Korea, or is it just like a temporary position you're like learning from and experiencing like the Korean culture? Like, do you want to stay in Korea long term?
It's something that I think about, and something that I haven't necessarily made up my mind on, to be
Mm,
honest with you. I sign, so our contracts here are 1 year at a time,
mm,
1 year at a time. So I'll actually be coming up on negotiations. Probably, what are we, end of October? In the next few weeks, probably sometime in November is when we'll begin negotiating the next contract. And I do intend to stay um, for a fourth year.
okay.
Whether I'm going to be here long term, it's hard to say. I really I can't I haven't made up my mind, I guess.
Hmm.
So I'm taking it one day at a time. Um, I'm pretty happy with my school, and I know that's not always the case with some teachers that come here. And I've had conversations with the CEO of our company. It's technically it's called a Hagwon, which is a private school,
Mm,
which is different than the public sector. And these are kids that are, the kindergarten kids, they come here all day, and the elementary kids, they come for 2 hours after their day school.
okay.
And I've had conversations with the CEO of the company about potentially trying to get me to move up higher and higher.
Mm,
However, I don't know if that's, a long-term commitment that I'm willing to make. So
mm,
yeah, each I'm taking kind of taking it day by day for now. And
mm,
with COVID, haven't really been able to travel around
mm,
Asia,
mm,
which kind of stinks. And that was one of the things I was most excited about. So now that things are starting to open up a little bit more here, I think staying for a fourth year, there will definitely be some more travel opportunities to experience the different countries and cultures that I was expecting.
mm. Definitely, definitely. And if you were to come back to America, I know you haven't decided, what country to go to, but if you were to come back to America, would you pursue a more traditional business field or would you stick with the education industry?
Yeah, I think there could be an alternative, or a good mix of the two. I actually, when I was at CH Robinson, I was contemplating applying for the L&D, no, L&D, learning and development position. I
Mm,
get R&D because we have R&D here. L&D, learning and development, where you'd be training and helping with onboarding, which I ultimately decided not to apply for it just because
mm,
of how burnt out I was, and I knew that wasn't going to give me the chance to travel abroad. So if I were to move back to America, I would probably look to get back into the business world. I don't know if I would go back into sales necessarily. I found that wasn't necessarily my passion, I guess you can say.
mm,
And I think teaching and helping others is a strong passion, and that's what I've learned during my time here. And yes, I love working with the kids; they're great. Um, I just don't know if I would want to teach in a school in the U.S.
mm, mm.
So
And
we'll see.
you mentioned COVID, so we'll jump to that topic because I'm very interested
Yes,
as to how did you go to Korea right before COVID started?
yeah,
Okay.
I got here about 2 weeks before things took off and started getting out of hand. So
Oh no.
It was interesting. It was new to everybody. I mean,
Mm,
it wasn't even a thing back in the US yet. And
mm,
everyone back home is sending messages, texts, getting emails, messages on social media. Hey, are
mm,
you okay? What's going on? And I
mm,
was like, you know just as much as I do.
mm,
Um, it was an interesting time, and looking back, we're still not really done with it as the
mm.
US is. Um, we're still wearing masks in school, indoors
Okay.
and outdoors. Everything's kind of back to normal, but yeah, it was really, really strange. And being in a school, having kids catching it, and people weren't really sure how to handle it the right way. Um, then you start seeing other countries start
Mm-hmm.
getting exposed, and it's blowing up in other countries, and then it becomes this global phenomenon, and it was just super fascinating. And I guess I don't want to get into COVID too much because it is a relatively depressing topic to talk about. It's not very fun,
Mm-hmm.
but no, it did have a big impact on the world. So you can't really overlook it.
Mm-hmm.
But just looking at it as a whole, it's just crazy how it lasted and is continuing to last as long as it did, and just how my experience here is going to be completely different to what everyone back home went through.
Mm-hmm.
I was back home in Chicago over the summer for about a month and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and just talking with friends, catching up with them. You know, my I couldn't relate to a lot of what they went through. You
Mm-hmm.
guys going through a full lockdown and everything, whereas here we never quite had that, but we had the higher restrictions, and we still kind of have some in place. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just it is an interesting topic, I guess, to talk about. Not one of
Mm-hmm.
my favorites, just
Oh.
because of how much it is come up. And
Mm-hmm.
Korea is now a little bit behind where you guys are moving past it and have
Mm-hmm.
moved on from it, but we're still very much living with it every day.
Okay.
So yeah, it's unfortunate. I think talking about the education here and even the kids back in the US, there is a huge drop off now with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the younger kids especially. And being an English teacher, learning a language, seeing how people's mouth moves is very important and vital
Mm-hmm.
to learn a new language. And a lot of these kids out that we're teaching, they they can't see our mouth moving just because of a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had some parents actually request to have teachers teach without masks, but the government does not allow that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's weird. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know what else
Mm-hmm.
to kind of to say.
So do you feel like Korea's kind of stuck dealing with it for now, or do you see in like the near future more releasing from these stricter guidelines?
Yeah, I think in the past few months, especially, it's loosened up a ton, getting rid of
Okay.
the outdoor mask mandate. By the I think the hesitation right now with fully lifting everything is just because of cold and flu season coming
Mm-hmm.
and different variations. So I think I try not to read too much on it, but what I last
Mm-hmm.
read was after the winter, so early in the spring is when they're planning on lifting, all the restrictions and whatnot. But in terms of travel, the country's open. Tourism is popping back, is bouncing back. I've had a couple friends come and visit, which has been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just showing them around, and kind of things are getting back to normal, which is good to see.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, weird, unfortunate timing. About 2 weeks after I got here, people started just freaking out, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Very
it's
stressful. Yeah.
yeah, stressful, memorable, unique, I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say. I'm curious to
Definitely.
see how the history books will look in 30, 40 years time from now, how it will kind of be summarized up in
Mm-hmm.
in textbooks.
Definitely. Definitely weird to think it'll be in books, textbooks at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then moving to a more positive note, um, what have been your favorite things in Korea regarding culture, food, just how the people interact with each other. Maybe even if you have some favorite spots in Korea.
Yeah. I guess for starters, the food. I love the food here. It's amazing.
Hmm.
Korean barbecue. It's not a meal. It's an experience more than anything where you can sit around a grill and just cook your own meat and um, drinking is a big part of the culture and part of the
Hmm.
Korean barbecue experience where you sit around the table and you grill meat, you have some beers and some soju and socialize, interact with Koreans and they kind of teach you more about Korean culture, which I think is a really cool component of the barbecue experience that you have
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
And the food is just delicious. That's
Hmm.
a whole different thing. The taste is amazing, but just the experience of dining out is one of my favorite things.
Hmm.
And you go to a restaurant in the US, you might sit there for 25, 30 minutes, time to go.
Hmm.
On a Friday night, you can sit around at a restaurant for 3, 4 hours and just interact,
Hmm.
keep ordering food. And it's just such a unique part of Korean culture. And I know a lot of my friends are going to Korean restaurants back home and they're
Hmm.
saying how much they love it. And
Hmm.
my one friend that came and visited here, he said like, "Oh my gosh, this is so much better than it is back home." And he thought it was good there. So yeah, I think the food is awesome. The people are super kind. They are
Hmm.
so curious about foreigners in the West.
Hmm.
I mean, some of the older generation especially, they don't speak a lot of English, but they will just come up to you and say, "Oh, USA," and they're just so excited to meet you. And I didn't serve in the war, but they're so thankful and grateful for Americans in particular. So it's it's definitely unique when the random people are coming up to you and trying to take a picture with you or just talk to you.
Hmm.
It's pretty cool. But
Hmm.
yeah, people and and the food are two of my favorite things. And some good spots that I have here. I do go out and Itaewon quite a bit.
Hmm.
I'm in a baseball league actually, a
Hmm.
weekend baseball league. So it's a mix of foreigners and expats primarily, and or of Koreans and expats, sorry.
Hmm.
And usually we have bars that sponsor our baseball teams and they're located there. So after our games on the weekends, we'll go out and get some dinner and stop at the bars and socialize that way.
Hmm.
So Itaewon is a fun area. Hongdae is another popular one with a lot of food, good restaurants, good cafes. Cafes are huge here. If you like
Hmm.
coffee, you can find 20 cafes on each street. But yeah, traveling Jamshil Stadium, baseball. How could I forget that? The Korean Baseball League is so much fun. It's such a different atmosphere than a Major League Baseball game. And
Hmm.
I play baseball here. I'm a huge baseball fan. I just went to a playoff game actually on Monday, and that's another hot spot. So you're going to be here in the spring. I highly recommend getting to a game. I'd be happy to go. It's
Yes.
such it's such a cool cultural experience. Like people are singing and there's music playing over the speakers during the
Hmm.
game, and every player has their own at bat song, and it's really cool. It's really
Hmm.
unique. So Jamshil Baseball Stadium is one of my go-to places in Seoul.
Hmm. We'll definitely have to plan something.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. But
I-
yeah, I'd say the country's really small. So
Hmm.
travel as much as you can on the weekend. Everything is accessible by bus or even planes. It's a small country.
Hmm.
Go to Jeju Island, go to
Hmm.
Busan down in the south, to the East Coast, Sokcho,
Hmm.
or Pyeongchang where the Olympics were.
Hmm.
There's so many easily accessible cities and spots that you can hit on a weekend. So yeah, and being stuck in Korea, I guess for the last 2 years because of COVID, I've had plenty of time to explore the country.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And from like the food, the people, and even baseball, it seems like there's a lot of community and like just people are. I know Korea and most of East Asia is more collectivist countries,
Yep.
but is there definitely like a sense of community like throughout Seoul and Korea itself? Just from what you have examined and more like, you know, barbecue, it's an event for people to communicate and meet each other. Would you say
Yeah,
that's true?
that's spot on. You hit the nail on the head there. Community is huge, and you don't have to know somebody to kind of be a community with them. Like
Mm-hmm.
going back to the barbecue experience, the table next to you, you might not really know them. They might not really speak English, but you guys might cheers your glasses and try to communicate over some broken English here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very kind, and you might all sit together at the same table.
Mm-hmm.
It's really really cool, and um, yeah, that's kind of touching on the people, how nice and kind they are, and
Mm-hmm.
just curious. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really unique culture, and um, I'm still learning more and more about it every single day.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll final question, just because I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Yeah,
Um,
no worries.
what advice would you give to those in International Business Association, the international
For
business
sure.
majors, to best utilize their experience in college and then apply it to the workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of figured that was coming, as it usually does. I think networking is huge. Obviously, when you reached out, I was happy to see that Dr. Ribbons is kind of keeping that networking alive, and you never know where networking is going to take you. Um, just real quick, some of the Korean staff that we have, there's higher turnover with the supervisors,
Hmm.
and we've had, I think, 3 or 4 different supervisors in the time that I've been at my school, and three three of them I can remember have reached out directly to me,
Hmm.
offering me jobs at whatever school they're going to. So
Hmm.
just networking is huge, no matter what country you're in, no matter what job you're in. Um, it will pay dividends, and I love my job, but always having those networks and those connections in your back pocket. You never know when you'll need them.
Hmm.
So start young. Start when you're in college. Get your LinkedIn built up, because that's going to be one of the best ways, especially in the business world. I'm a little guilty. I'm not using it a ton teaching and being over here.
Hmm.
But for anyone in IBA, get your LinkedIn built up. You're going to be using it a lot when you start applying for jobs and talking to different recruiters at job fairs, and I think that's a great resource. So use LinkedIn to network and connect with future employers, future colleagues, or even past alumni like myself. If you want to share my LinkedIn with anybody, if they have
Hmm.
any questions about how further questions that I couldn't answer in here, definitely you can share that, share my email, whatever. I'm happy to kind of help and answer any questions that anyone might have.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess another one, keep an open mind.
Hmm.
Try not to set too many expectations, because that for me, that's typically when I feel disappointment set in. So
Hmm.
I like to kind of just keep an open mind and have a very open mindset when dealing with everything, not just cultures. I think job interviews, new opportunities on campus, just have an open mind. You don't know what you're going to get out of that experience, or how beneficial getting involved on campus can be. So just
Hmm.
keep an open mind and get involved on campus as much
100%.
as you can.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, no problem, Luke. It was
Mm,
great talking with you, and
yes.
wish everybody best in IBA. Hopefully you guys are able to get to some consulates now that things are open back up, and see
Mm,
some get some visits there. And
mm.
are you gonna do the case competition?
I
Is that
haven't
coming
signed
up?
up for that. I don't know too much about that. I'll have to talk
IBA
to.
members, that's another one. Do the case competition. That was one of the coolest experiences of my time at ISU.
Mm,
Weekend in St. Louis, just learning kind of to work in a team atmosphere away from
mm.
campus. So that was really cool, and I highly recommend signing up for the case competition. Dr. Ribbons will love that too.
Yes, I'll definitely take a look into it then.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan, for talking to me today. And then hopefully
No
I'll see
problem,
you in
Luke.
Korea then.
Yeah, shoot me an email or a text, whatever. When you get here, you'll get Kakao Chat, and we'll link up for a baseball game or and some barbecue once you get here.
Definitely. 100%. All
All
right.
right,
Have a
Luke.
good one.
Thanks, man. Take care.